Okay, let's get right into it. The countdown. You know the sound, you know the feeling. Think New Year's Eve, think a rocket launch. It's that universal sign that something big is about to happen. But what's interesting is how that something is starting to feel like it's happening in our lives, all the time.
You've seen this a million times, right? It just flashes across your screen, super bold, super urgent, 24 hours only. And just like that, it grabs you. It creates this instant feeling of scarcity, like time isn't just passing anymore, it's actively running out.
And then, of course, there's this old classic. Graphics and phrases like this one, they are everywhere. They come from this huge toolkit of pre-made, ready-to-go countdowns and clocks. It's a whole visual language that's been engineered for literally one reason: to make us act, to make us click, to make us buy, right now.
When you add it all up, you get this constant low-grade hum of anxiety in the background of your day, the limited time offer. So what is really going on here? How is this feeling of a ticking clock manufactured so darn effectively, and why does it work on us so well?
Well, to really get the why, we've got to look at the how. So let's pull back the curtain a little bit on the actual craft behind these time-based stories. Honestly, you might be surprised at how simple it is.
Yeah, making that classic counting down animation, it's way more straightforward than you'd think. It's literally a few clicks in a video editor. You make a transparent layer, you slap on a timecode effect, change a couple of settings, and that's it. The so-called magic behind that urgent countdown is really just a simple, accessible little trick.
But here's the thing, these technical tricks, they are never just about the trick itself. It's like this quote says, it's all about one thing: immersion. It's about pulling you, the viewer, into a feeling, into a specific moment, into a story.
And that little countdown trick is just one tool in a massive cinematic toolkit. Filmmakers are constantly using strategic lighting to set a mood, a variety of shots to give us context, and really purposeful camera movement and sound design to guide our emotions. Every single element you see here is a building block, and it's chosen so carefully to build a narrative and make us feel a very specific way.
Okay, so we've seen how these tools can create a sense of commercial urgency. But what happens when we take these exact same ideas, the countdown, the focused story, the heightened emotion, and apply them to something completely different? What happens when that clock is counting down to something way more personal?
Because there is one countdown that is more fundamental, more inescapable than any sale or offer could ever be. It's the ultimate deadline, and it beats inside every single one of us.
Here's the clinical definition. It's pretty stark, isn't it? It's objective, and what it does is transform the abstract idea of mortality into a very concrete, measurable timeline. Suddenly, the countdown becomes terrifyingly real. And this is where it gets fascinating. On the one hand, you have that cold, clinical reality. But on the other, look at how we process it through story. These are the actual names of sound effects you can download. We don't just hear a biological process. We hear a cinematic mystery. We hear the drama and the emotion of life itself. And the weight of this countdown is just immense. I mean, as this data shows, the impact is absolutely staggering. It's not just a physical fight. It's an emotional and social one, completely dominated by anxiety, depression, and just overwhelming stress on finances and family. As the clock ticks, the pressure builds in every single part of a person's life. So, when you're faced with that ultimate deadline, what do you do? How do people possibly cope with that kind of pressure? Well, it turns out they do what humans have always done. They tell stories. This quote just captures that shift in perspective so perfectly. When the ending is a known fact, the focus often moves away from the end itself and instead intensifies on the time you have left. The story suddenly isn't about dying anymore. It's about living. The docuseries My Last Days is a perfect example of this. It finds people who are living with a terminal diagnosis and gives them a platform to share their own stories. The series is actively using the tools of storytelling to help its subjects, and us, the viewers, find real meaning inside a finite amount of time.
But how in the world does someone tell a new story about their life, especially when things are so incredibly difficult? It takes creativity. And creativity isn't some magical lightning bolt that you have to be born with. As you can see here, it's a process. It's really just a system for taking the ideas and experiences you already have and then combining them in new, powerful ways.
So here's one really practical method for that. It's called idea stacking. First, you absorb raw material from everywhere. Then, you log everything that seems interesting. And finally, you actively look for connections. Now, this isn't just for inventing gadgets, it's for reinventing meaning. You take the raw material of your own life,
your memories, your skills, your relationships, and you recombine them to tell a new story about the time you've got.
And this, right here, is where it all comes together. The tools that storytellers use and the ticking clock of our own lives. They aren't separate things at all. We can actually use one to help us navigate the other.
So, we've seen the simple little tools that are used to manufacture urgency for a sale, and we've felt the profound, heavy weight of our own mortality. So the question becomes, how do we take the tools of a storyteller and apply them to our own lives, especially when we're facing that final chapter?
You know, screenwriters have a whole playbook of tricks they use to create endings that you'll never forget. If you look at this slide, you'll see a few of the classics. Misdirection, the emotional twist, defying expectations. These are the techniques for crafting a killer ending to a movie.
But think about this. These aren't just for movie scripts. They're a mindset, a way of living a life with purpose and a sense of control. You could use misdirection to guide your own attention away from fear and toward what you can still do. You could create an emotional twist by subverting the expectation of sadness with a story full of joy and connection. You could put yourself in the reader's shoes, see the predictable, expected story of an illness, and then deliberately choose to write a completely different one.
In the end, the countdown is always there. The sale's going to end, the movie will finish, and our own time will eventually run out. But the tools of storytelling, they give us agency. They let us shape our own narrative and find meaning, no matter what deadline we're facing. So the final question is really for you. If your life is the story, what's your twist?